not so. So we return to the radically empirical observation that what we're immediately aware of, whoever we are, is appearances. Of course, people have different types of appearances, but there they are. Appearances to awareness and our awareness of the appearances. And if we just slip momentarily over to a Dzogchen interpretation of this, or a making sense of this, if we ask, well, where are these appearances coming from? There's an answer, a proposed answer, and that is that, well, let's start from scratch. Let's start from a time when there are no appearances. We don't have to go back to the embryo or the Big Bang or anything like that. All we have to do is go back to deep, dreamless sleep, where all appearances have vanished. We're not aware of anything, and we're not even aware of being asleep. So we're starting from scratch. And then in the process of waking up, let's say we just skip the dreaming business for a little bit and just go from deep sleep to the waking state. Well, in the deep sleep there are no appearances, but let's imagine that you're actually lucid, and that's clearly possible, definitely possible, to be in deep dreamless sleep and to be aware that you're in deep dreamless sleep. A lot of people have experienced it. You know. And so let's imagine you're going from there, that there you are, and you're just resting in your substrate consciousness, because that's all that's left. Without having achieved shamatha, you can still be there. You just don't have it completely illuminated, as you will if you experience it having achieved shamatha. But you're resting there, and in a sheer vacuity. And then you're like in an empty theater, or just in a sensory deprivation tank. In fact, you are. And we're going to call that space, that sheer space, that vacuity, which is devoid of appearances, we'll just call that the substrate, or the alaya in Sanskrit, the substrate. The space, an empty space. And the awareness of that substrate is substrate consciousness, consciousness of the substrate. And it's not human. When you're in deep dreamless sleep, you're not male or female. You're not old or young. You're not Argentinian or German. It's devoid of ethnicity, devoid of gender. It's not actually even human. When you're just resting there, there's nothing human about it. It's not conditioned by your human experience, personal history, and so on and so on. But of course, we don't stay there. And so let's imagine, John, there's just this transition. I'm going to keep this really short because I want to get to the meditation. But let's imagine then, you're, from deep sleep, somebody shakes you and says, hey, wake up! And you do. And then suddenly, whoosh, all these appearances, the appearance of the person that shook you, your room, your tactile, well, all of them, tactile sensation, maybe there's incense burning in the room, so maybe somebody pops some coffee into your mouth, and so forth. So, whoa, suddenly, lots of appearances. And you also will very likely be having mental appearances, like, why'd you wake me up? And who are you? Mental events will be coming up as well. And so you have these appearances arising in all 6 domains. Where do the appearances come from? The appearances themselves. Appearances to your mind, appearances to all 5 senses. And Dzogchen tradition, this is straight from Dujum Lingpa, or that is Padmasambhava by way of Dujum Lingpa, classic Dzogchen teachings, is all these appearances are arising out of the substrate. The substrate's a vacuity, but it's a pregnant vacuity. It's filled with potentiality. Ready to be sparked, ready to be triggered, like turning on a holographic display, which when it's off, it's just an empty room, and then you turn it on and then suddenly, whoo, out come the appearances. So, and then likewise, once you've awakened, you're in your normal waking state, then of course it's your Argentinian mind, your Chilean mind, and so forth and so on, male, female, old, young, educated, not educated, all the configurations of your mind. Your mind has sprung out. Your mind, your psyche, with which you're very familiar with, your personal history, your language skills, and all of that. Where'd that mind come from? Because you didn't have a mind 5 minutes ago. You're mindless. You weren't, that is, you're just aware. That's not much of a mind. That's like a stripped down, naked, really naked mind. That's subtle mind. It's not even human. But then you wake up and then you have a human mind. And that's quite obvious. Your human mind is emerging derivatively from substrate consciousness. And of course the substrate consciousness isn't just a clean, clear crystal flow of awareness. It's also profoundly configured by past experiences, memories, karma, and so forth. So you don't wake up with somebody else's mind. You're catalyzed. You've aroused those potentialities, the configuration, the conditioning, which is stored dormantly, quietly in your substrate consciousness, is catalyzed. And then, lo and behold, here's your conscious familiar mind, and here are your conscious familiar appearances. And there you are. Then you fall asleep again some hours later, and then as you're falling asleep, all the appearances are withdrawing into the mental domain. We have 6 domains, right? All the sensory appearances are withdrawing into mental domain as you're falling asleep. And all of the configurations of your human mind are withdrawing into substrate consciousness, and the whole process occurs in reverse. So that's the theory. None of the appearances or the awareness are emerging from neurons. Those would be magical neurons if they were. They'd be really crazy neurons. Who's ever, they'd be magical neurons. Because the chemicals, electricity. So, no. But they are influenced, that's by sure. We've known that, for a long time. I mean, long before anybody knew about neurons, everybody knew that if you drink a lot of alcohol, that shifts your appearances and your awareness. And it's chemicals, there's no doubt about it. So we know that a lot, for a long time. And so there we are. But the alcohol doesn't transform into silliness, or dizziness, or making silly jokes, and so forth. It's just conditioning your awareness. It doesn't transform into your awareness. And your awareness doesn't transform into brain tissue, and so forth and so on. But now briefly, I want to keep it really close. So here we are. And Padmasambhava will say, well, all these appearances you're experiencing right now, they don't have any existence outside of the space of your own awareness. They're basically all coming from your substrate, and they don't exist outside of your substrate. Now the substrate is full of all these appearances, and it's being illuminated by your human mind. But we're in a bubble. Each of us is in a bubble. And we're experiencing our own appearances, not anybody else's. And we're experiencing with our minds, our conceptualization, our personal history, interpretation, all of that, and not anybody else's. And so even though it's kind of a big world, as I look out on those beautiful mountains on the horizon, the space of my mind is quite large, actually. I mean, at least that large. I look into the starry sky at night, I said, whoa, the space of my mind is quite large, big enough for constellations and so forth. And yet, it's my space. It's not anybody else's space. So it can feel a little bit claustrophobic. That is my space, my space. And all of these appearances are arising in dependence upon my brain. But what's outside of that? I don't really think I'm the only human being in the universe. I don't think everybody else is just a figment of my imagination. I think that other people are more than appearances to my mind. Otherwise, complete solipsist. So what's going on outside? What's outside the bubble? And this is a question we've been asking in the West for quite a long time now. People like Galileo, Kepler, Descartes said, well, all these impressions, all these, they call them secondary attributes. The colors we see, the sounds we hear, the smells, the tastes, the tactile sensations, all of these are arising relative to our human sensory faculties, but they don't exist out there. And so as long as we're working within this bubble, and it's not only human bubble, but it's also women's bubbles may be a little bit different than men's bubbles, and South American bubbles may be a little bit different than Northern bubbles, and German and Italian and so forth, different bubbles. But what's outside the bubble? And people like Galileo really wanted to know. What's outside of what it is outside of an anthropocentric bubble of our own impressions that are arising in dependence upon our own bodies, because that's frankly a small world. In my case, it's an allonocentric world. But that's a small world, just one person. And so Galileo looked at this, and he wasn't alone. Descartes and others, they recognized, and bear in mind, they're all Christian. And they all assumed that God created the universe in 6 days, took a rest, and it was already there. That is, he basically finished everything besides us in 5 days. He's very busy. And the 6th day, they said, okay, now, what was it? Spit and image, that's what they call it, spit and image. Spit into the dust, made a man, and then, give him a companion. And so that wasn't a whole lot of work, compared to the whole universe and then just us. But it was all done. The point here, I'm not speaking sarcastically, that on the 6th day when human beings were created, the rest of everything was done. It was a done deal. And it was one universe created by one God. And Galileo, since he wasn't allowed to stay in the monastery and explore God's mind by looking within, which is what he wanted to do, Dad wouldn't pay it, so he turned his contemplative inquiry outside to understand the universe or the creation by way of to understand the mind of the Creator, which is what he wanted to understand as a contemplative. But he wasn't given that chance. So then he still wanted to know the mind of the Creator. But rather than looking inwards to seek the mind of God, let's look outwards to inferentially understand the mind of the Creator by way of the creation. Understand the clockmaker by way of the clock. And the more thoroughly understand the clock, the more thoroughly understand the mind of the clockmaker. That makes good sense. So God is a great engineer, a great clockmaker. But then we got a problem too. As melodious as Italian is, Galileo couldn't quite come to the conclusion that God was Italian. He might have been tempted. All things considered, that would be a nice choice. But he didn't really think God was Italian, or that God spoke Italian, or Hebrew, or Latin, or Greek. Because these are all embedded in history and language and culture and so forth, and God was not embedded in Israel. He wasn't limited to Israel or to, Greece or Rome. So what language does God think? If you could think God's thoughts, what language would you think in? And of course, it came to the conclusion, God thinks in mathematics. Because mathematics is not a human language. So God thinks in mathematics. God's laws are probably in terms of mathematics. And how do we then view reality, at least inferentially, to leap out of our skin, outside the bubble, to try to approximate a God's eye vision on what's really going on? Not just in my bubble, but what's really going on from God's perspective. Because he knows what's really going on, because he created everything. And he wanted to know reality, but he wanted to know the mind that created morality, and that was God. And so there is the trajectory for modern science for the last 400 years. It goes from a God's eye perspective to a purely objective perspective to what Thomas Nagel calls a view from nowhere. And that is, if you're an atheist, or you kind of leave God out of the equation, then, well, what does the universe look like from nowhere in particular? From no one's perspective. Just what's there. And as David Gross, who's now a Nobel laureate, he spoke at a conference I organized at UCSB, and he spoke, it was wonderful, he spoke like a prophet, very magisterially, he was very quite an impressive individual. And he said, nature speaks in only one language, and that is the language of mathematics. Behold, a real believer, and a respectable belief. Again, there's no sarcasm here at all. But it went from God's language to the language of nature. So there it is, a way of looking outwards to know what's really going on. But you still have to leap outside the bubble and to try to do it inferentially. Whereas contemplatives, Hindu, Buddhist, Christian, Taoist, are seeking reality inwards. Now, I'm just going to end on this note. And that is, if your interest in meditation is solely ontological, ultimate nature of reality, your avenue may be, for example, okay, let's look at phenomena. Okay, well, let's look at them. But you have very simple questions. Phenomena, what we're experiencing from moment to moment, sensorially or mentally, are they permanent or impermanent? Okay, that's not phenomenological, that's just how do they exist, okay? And then, bing, got the right answer, impermanent. Okay, that makes sense. And then are these, by nature, satisfying or unsatisfying, dukkha or sukha? You've been around for a while. If you're a teenager, you might still think sukha. Getting into your 20s, probably figuring, I don't think so. That last girlfriend I had was a bummer, It was so unsatisfying, and she was so pretty, but it still turned out to be a bummer. So by the time you get to 20s, you might kind of figure it out, maybe it's dukkha, 60s, if you haven't figured it out yet, you've not been paying attention. Have you looked in the mirror recently? Are you satisfied? And then, again, not the business. Well, that's easy. I mean, brain scientists say there's no CPU in the brain. There's no central processing unit. There's nobody in there. And a lot of psychologists say, no, there's no such thing as a separate, independent ego. So we go, if the scientists are on side. And then they would have said, yeah, look, you got a bunch of phenomena, but you don't find an ego that's in charge of everything. So, yep, I think I just figured out the 3 marks of existence in about 30 seconds. Impermanent, dukkha, and non-self. That wasn't hard. Are we finished? Of course, that didn't modify my worldview at all, really, or my way of life, or my values. It's just, impermanent, Unsatisfying, I knew that, kind of depressed. And then non-self, yeah, got it. So we just figured out the 3 marks of existence, but what's really happened? Maybe not a lot. And if we go for the Madhyamaka teachings, Mahayana teachings, perfection of wisdom teachings, and apply our intelligence to that all phenomena are empty of their own inherent nature, existing in and of themselves, arise only relationally. Give that maybe 40 seconds. I said, yeah, that makes sense. Got it. Are we done? That's pretty much the wisdom teachings of Buddhism, yeah? Are we we're finished? Right? And I still feel the same. I'm a 20th century guy, I've been trained in physics, biology, etc., etc. Yep, got it. Am I a Buddhist yet? And so what? But that's not all there is in Buddhism, as we'll find out very shortly in this text on Shamatha, that the Buddhist way of getting outside the bubble of our own anthropocentric view, or in an individual case, an alanocentric, a birgitocentric, and so forth, is not by leaping outside to non-human concepts or to third-person observations that are corroborated by multiple observers and therefore are considered to be independent of any observer. That is what God would see. Not that way. As I was thinking about it this afternoon, I can't think of one piece of technology that Buddhists have developed in 2,500 years. Can you? Like, this is the Buddhist iPhone, or this is the Buddhist clock, or this is the Buddhist anything. I mean, maybe not. I mean, prayer wheel? Is that as good as we got? It may be. I can't think of anything at all, you know. So Galileo started out with telescope. That was cool. Chronometer, so he could figure out whether balls rolling down a ramp accelerated or went at constant velocity. But Buddhists had no telescope and no chronometer. So if you ask a Buddhist, go to any Tibetan Lama and ask him. I dare you. When a ball rolls down a ramp, does it go at the same speed or does it accelerate? Or does it go slower? I dare you. And the Lama may I'll ask you, why are you asking that question? Why do you care? You're getting older, you're going to die. And you're asking that question? This is going to make you happy? This is going to alleviate suffering by knowing, woohoo, it's accelerating. Who cares? But if they take you seriously, I think they'll probably say, I don't know. Next. But there's an interesting complementarity here, or counterpart. Look at the last 400 years of rise of modern science. In terms of, this is a lot of intelligence. And for 135 years, a lot of that intelligence got into experimental psychology, cognitive neuroscience, a lot of very intelligent people, no question. Okay, tell me, last 400 years of science altogether, last 135 years of experimental psychology, what progress have we made in terms of refining attention skills and metacognitive skills? None. That's interesting, isn't it? Technology galore, fantastic knowledge, what I admire. But in terms of technologies for exploring the mind firsthand, nothing. I think that's pretty safe. That's pretty fair. But I already did it with the Buddhists, right? Nothing. Not even a clock. Their clock was, a sundial or a water clock. And they had them 2,000 years ago. The very word for hour in Tibetan is measure of water. Yeah, chuzu. So, is there a way to get outside the bubble, to transcend the bubble, without mathematics and without the instruments of technology? To be able to transcend the bubble of your own anthropocentric and birgitocentric, merikeocentric view, to see reality beyond the scope of your own personal, limited anthropocentric perspective? And the answer is yes, there is. It's not Vipashyana. It's Shamatha. Let's practice Shamatha. Voilà, so we're going to return to the text and go right into it. And be prepared for a bit of a wild ride. People listening by podcast might want to be sitting down. Maybe not driving. Don't be near any sharp instruments. And if you're sitting down here, you might, if you have a seatbelt, it would be probably good to fasten it so you don't get whiplash. So we're going to jump right in, shall we see? This is going to be fun. Moreover, it is said, Karma Chagmé continues, moreover, it is said that if you cultivate Shamatha alone, by that he means Shamatha, not Vipashyana, just Shamatha, little old Shamatha. And this term Shamatha covers a whole spectrum. It's a range of methods. Shamatha refers to a range of methods for developing and achieving first jhana, second, third, fourth jhana, all in the form realm. And if you continue practice Shamatha to subtler and subtler levels, it'll take you into the formless realm, into the first samapati, the first absorption, infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothing whatever, and then beyond perception or non-perception. So that's all, that whole spectrum there, that whole bandwidth, going from the desire realm to the form realm to the formless realm. It's all practicing shamatha. And within this, there are different stages or dimensions of reality that are revealed, corresponding exactly to, or relative to, the level, kind of like the frequency, like, high frequency, low frequency, corresponding to the frequency of your mental awareness. So an analogy that's not bad here is that for visual perception, we human beings can't see infrared, and we can't see ultraviolet, and we can't see anything at a lower frequency than infrared, can't see infrared, and we can't see ultraviolet or anything higher, gamma and so forth. So we have a bandwidth, and that's what we can pick up. Other creatures can pick up, other animals can pick up outside of our bandwidth. Same goes for hearing, certain frequencies. So we have these analogs. But now we're talking about mental perception. Mental perception. We don't even have the word in cognitive psychology. It's amazing. It's really astonishing. Not even the word, let alone the notion of refining it. Well, we do here, so I'm not going to be showing the limitations of psychology. Well, look what we have here and see what comes up. We have mental perception, and ordinary human mental perception works within a certain bandwidth. What we can be mentally aware of from the perspective of our human minds, observing our dreams, our thoughts, our memories, and so forth. And that's it. We're locked into that. But what happens then if you dissolve down through that? You transcend that by not going outwards, inferentially, conceptually, and so forth, like science does, and with the superb support of technology, but you go inwards with the support of one fundamental technology, and that's shamatha. That's your basic technology. And you go inwards and you transcend the limitations of human bandwidth of perception. As you go into this portal, this limbo kind of space of the substrate consciousness, which is not human, but it's not anything else either. It's not deva, it's not animal, it's not configured as any other species or type of sentient being. It's that stem consciousness, ready to transform into a praetas consciousness or a dog's consciousness or what have you, depending on what it's conjoined with. So you come there, and now what happens to your bandwidth when you're no longer subjected to the limitations of human mind bandwidth, human perception. And that's what we're dealing with here. Bear in mind, Atisha said, it is only with the achievement of shamatha that you develop extrasensory perception, and that's tapping into mental perception with a broader bandwidth. Just that. It's mental perception with a broader bandwidth, which includes remote perception, remote viewing, where you're mentally seeing things that are far away in space, precognition, you're mentally seeing things in the future, awareness of other people's minds, aware of your own past lives, at clairaudience, you can mentally hear things that are sounds that are occurring elsewhere. That's the claim. Well, let's read. Okay, how do you get to that? He says, well, if you cultivate shamatha alone, that is not with Vipashyana, but now what level of shamatha? When we speak of achieving shamatha in this whole tradition, referring to, I think you know, access to the first jhana, threshold to the first jhana. You've crossed over into it, but you're not fully immersed in it yet. And that's widely considered to be sufficient shamatha to fully support Vipashyana. But he's going way beyond that. Okay? You have access to the first jhana, and then if you go deeper, you fully achieve the first jhana. And the gold standard, and it's the only one I'm interested in, is you fully achieve the first jhana. You can go into samadhi and remain 24 hours straight with unfluctuating, pristine focus of concentration, and your mind is absorbed in the form realm, so you're oblivious of the desire realm. You're oblivious of having a body, the surrounding sensory fields, because you're not working in that modality. That's not a human mind. That's a first jhana mind. And it's not human. So your human body's there, of course, from outside, but your mind is at that time not human any more than it is when it's resting in the substrate consciousness. But then you can go subtler. You can go into the second jhana, the third jhana, the fourth jhana. So he's saying, okay, if you cultivate shamatha alone and achieve the fourth jhana, you are able to display tainted paranormal abilities. These are siddhis, unconjoined with any deeper abilities. Unconjoined means deeper abilities of stemming from Vipashyana, ontological insight, like of a nirvana, for example. He says tainted paranormal abilities. And these are not magical abilities, and these are not miracles. Those are terrible translations. They're paranormal in the sense that a laser is a paranormal flashlight. Yeah, that's what it is. A flashlight is duh. But then you get it high energy, you have it single frequency, you sharply focus it, and you cut through diamonds. That's paranormal light. But it's not magical. And it's not miraculous. But if you didn't understand optics, you say, oh, it certainly is magical. He used light and he cut through. Magic, miracle. That's because you don't understand the technology. And I'll show you the best technology. Would you like me to display my clairaudience, my clairvoyance, and my knowledge of other people's minds? I'm about to do it. Right? I can hear, I can Skype with my wife. I'm hearing her voice from afar. I can see her from afar. I can have mind-to-mind transmission. Hi, sweetie, how are you? I'm fine, what are you doing? Same old, same old. She gets so bored of listening to me talk on Skype, she doesn't Skype me anymore. And not her fault. How are you? It's great here, I really love it. It's going really, really... The same thing day after day. She's not Skyping me anymore. Mind-to-mind, getting to know Alan's mind, so boring. So, but this is it. This is paranormal. I mean, if you could drop this back into the 19th century, they'd start worshipping your feet. Like God must have dropped this into your hand, right? Or if you're in India, some deva dropped this into your hand. Clairvoyant said, oh, very cool. Very, very bod acha. I like it very much. How much you want to sell? This is paranormal technology. We've just gotten used to it. And then people who know computers say, there's nothing paranormal about it, you just have to know the science. Right. So, let's go. Tainted paranormal ability means it's still tainted by self-grasping, reification of self, reification of other phenomena, which is a type of delusion. Reifying yourself as inherently existent, reifying anything else, you're fundamentally deluded. But you can still have paranormal abilities. Big ones, as we'll see very shortly. That's tainted. It doesn't mean they're grimy, dirty, or what have you. It just means that they're not free of the taint, contamination of delusion. Okay? That's what he means by tainted. Okay, so from the Shatta Sarasrika Prajna Paramita, this is the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra in 100,000 verses. This is the largest version. This is the opus magnum. This is the big one. There are many shorter versions. This is the most expanded version of all the Mahayana Sutras on the perfection of wisdom. This is it. Sheshin Tongdak Yapa, 100,000 verses. Very big. Multiple volumes. So it's, in the Mahayana tradition, this is about as definitive as it gets. And here's what it states. This is where you need to put on your seatbelts. You accomplish the first jhana and you abide therein. You accomplish the second jhana and abide therein. You accomplish the third jhana and abide therein. You accomplish the fourth jhana and abide therein. There's a lot of repetition in these sutras. You find in the Pali Canon too, so but we'll get over it. So basically, he's saying this is how you do it. You don't just jump to the fourth jhana, you achieve them successively. You achieve first the access to the first jhana, and then the full jhana, and then you go on to second, third, fourth jhana, and you abide therein. You settle, so now you've achieved it, you've made your new home, you've made a new base camp. Our base camp right now is in the desire realm and a human mind. Very limited bandwidth, right? Whereas you achieve the first jhana, you've got another base camp. That opens up, it's not just another state of consciousness, it opens a spectrum of another dimension of reality in the form realm. It's not just your subjective state, it's a dimension of reality. Get to the second jhana, another dimension. Third, fourth, well, this means now you've scoped out, you're seeing transparently the entirety, the full bandwidth of the form realm. The form realm. That's a big deal. This fourth jhana was really strongly emphasized by the Buddha in the Pali Canon, and here we see in the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra. Okay, fourth jhana. Okay, but now you settle in meditative equipoise in the fourth jhana and experience numerous types of paranormal abilities. By the power of getting there will come with that ability some paranormal, that is to say, outside the normal range of a person dwelling in desire realm with an ordinary human mind. This is outside the scope. Like quantum mechanics is paranormal compared to classical physics. The technology coming out of quantum mechanics is paranormal compared to the technology of the 19th century. So nothing miraculous about it, no divine intervention. Okay, but now can you be more specific? What kind of paranormal ability? Please, what? You cause even the earth to quake. Okay, so tectonic plates can do that, and now you can too. Why you'd want to, I'm not quite sure. Unless you have a grudge against someone, which you shouldn't. So you can cause the earth to quake. Well, okay, reading from the year 2016. What? You transform from one to many. You can transform your form into multiple forms, like holographic replicas. Wow. You transform from many to one. After you've displayed yourself in myriad manifestations, like many reflections of the moon, you can withdraw them back into yourself again. You experience becoming visible and invisible. I know there are scientists right now trying to work on technology that could make things become invisible. They haven't gotten it yet, but they think they have some ideas. But here it says you can do this by the power of the fourth jhana. You can just simply make yourself invisible. Okay, really. You pass through walls. How can you? Your body is dense and the wall is dense. How do you do that? You pass through fences. Well, that would make sense. If you can pass through a wall, I guess you could pass through a fence, but how would that work? You can pass through mountains. Boy, that's a big wall. How would you do that? Why wouldn't you at least get stuck? You move about with an unimpeded body like a bird in the sky. Really. You move through space in the cross-legged position. That would be interesting to see. Like a feathered bird, except for no feathers and no wings. Just naked yogi. You move up through the earth and down into the earth as if moving through water. How can you do that? You walk upon water without sinking, as if proceeding on land. They said Jesus did that, but don't know how. How did you do that with the fourth jhana? What's the connection? You billow forth smoke and blaze with light like a bonfire. I think that's voluntary. It's not all the time. You do it when you want to. But it's really amazing. How would you do that? Okay, but he's not finished. Moreover, those endowed with such great paranormal abilities, cities, with such great might, and with such great power, stroke the sun and moon with their hands. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. 93 million miles away, there's a great big ball of burning gas and nuclear explosions. It's many thousands of degrees. How exactly do you touch that with your hand? How does that work? Why doesn't your hand get incinerated before you get close? What would it feel like? Hot, but really. How would you stroke it? Are you stroking a solar flare? What do you... and the moon... Okay, moon, 237,000 miles away. So Buddhists were the first ones to land on the moon with their hands. That's a long hand. How would that work? This is kind of like, what? And the power of their bodies extends as far as the world of Brahma. The power of their bodies. And with such physical zeal, the zeal is enthusiasm, virya, with such physical zeal you use types of paranormal abilities to provide sustenance for all the Lord Buddhas in incalculable, innumerable, immeasurable realms in the 10 directions of the world. You use your paranormal abilities to make offerings to the Buddhas in multiple world systems. And you go to those teachers of the Dharma and venerate those Lord Buddhas with bountiful food, alms, bedding, useful medicine for the ill, and utensils. So you're using your paranormal abilities in multiple world systems to make offerings to the Buddhas. Moreover, those many garments, alms, bedding, medicine for the ill, and utensils are not exhausted. You can keep on offering until you become a perfected Buddha in supreme, perfect enlightenment. Whew, that was a mouthful. Really. The meaning is that if you've cultivated faultless shamatha alone, in the achievement of the 4th jhana, such realizations occur. They are tainted paranormal abilities, so it's quite clear, which are achieved by non-Buddhists. So he's saying these were achieved, all of those were achieved prior to the Buddha, prior to the whole Buddhist tradition, by non-Buddhists, by great Hindu yogis, for hundreds of years prior to the Buddhists. It's a common belief throughout traditional Buddhism that Buddhists they're not unique to Buddha for sure, but they're not unique to Buddhist practitioners either. Those who had mastered samadhi, which had already been mastered before the Buddha ever came along, they had these abilities. By non-Buddhists, whether they're Hindus, they're Taoists or whatever, by shamans, there were this Bumbo, so in Tibet, in Mongolia and so forth, shamans all over the place. If they had developed this level of samadhi, they could display these, and so forth. In other words, it seems to have nothing to do with any doctrine, any belief system, any religion. It's just a matter of have you or have you not achieved the 4th jhana. If you have, then you have access to those paranormal abilities. If you don't, well then you don't. If the achievement of such shamatha is imbued with Vipashyana, there are untainted paranormal abilities. You move to another dimension of paranormal abilities that are now free of reification, which means those paranormal abilities are rooted in your awareness. And this is perfection of wisdom context. Imbued with your awareness that no phenomena really exists out there in and of itself by its own inherent nature. Nor does the mind inherently exist, nor do you inherently exist. And by the power of knowing reality as it is ontologically, knowing the nature of existence, that too gives rise to paranormal abilities. The basis of all the paranormal abilities and excellent qualities of the great adepts, the siddhas of India and Tibet, is shamatha. So this would include the Buddha himself, the many arhats, Mahayana Buddhism, the Buddha's great disciple who had extraordinary abilities in this regard. Many, many arhats over the generations after that, the bodhisattvas, the mahasiddhas of India, and then the many, many, many mahasiddhas, great accomplished yogis of Tibet, let alone Mongolia, Bhutan, Sikkim, Ladakh, and so forth. Shamatha. Furthermore, if you've not cultivated jhana, you've just skipped shamatha, you've gone on to vipassana alone or whatever, or maybe you're just doing mantras, or maybe you're doing 3-year retreats and doing a lot of visualization and mantras and rituals and recitations and prostrations and so forth, but you don't cultivate jhana. You don't even give a month to it. You don't do it at all because you're so busy doing all the visualizations and the rituals and the liturgies and the recitations and mantras, and more visualization, and more bells and more damarus and more offerings and more rituals, and then 3 years is finished and you can call yourself a lama. But you've not cultivated jhana because you actually never did it. If that's the case. Even though you strive for other roots of virtue, they are not included within the class of the sage's teachings. Or you're not practicing the Buddha's teachings. And that's interesting. It's kind of a bit tough. So if you do vipassana, but you don't cultivate jhana, you're not following the Buddha's teachings. I mean, that's what he said. They're not included within the class of the sage. That refers to the Buddha, of course. So you do 3-year retreats, do multiple 3-year retreats, but if you don't cultivate jhana, then you're not on the Buddha's path. Do Vajrasattva, do a lot of lamrim, if you like. But if all you're doing is just cultivating renunciation and bodhicitta, but you're not cultivating the culmination of lamrim, cultivation and realization, achievement of shamatha and vipashyana, and the union of the two, then all of your lamrim meditations, all your discursive meditations develop in renunciation and bodhicitta. It's all foreplay with no union. It's all foreplay. And no union of shamatha vipashyana. What was all the foreplay for? If you never get around to the union. I mean, the whole point was the union. As Shantideva said, the whole point of the first 5 perfections is the 6th perfection. And you don't get to the 6th perfection without the 5th. So people say, I'm practicing lamrim, but I don't do shamatha. Yeah, you're good at foreplay, but what about, union? So then you're not on the Buddha's path. That's what Karma Chagmé is saying. That's what Tsongkhapa says. Bit tough though, isn't it? So, but I just can't leave that big quote. I mean, good heavens. What do we make of that? We're in the 21st century. If we were reading this a century ago in Tibet, and we're all raised as Buddhists and so forth, then we might just read through that and say, yep, and move right on. Tibetan friend of mine, very cosmopolitan. He's traveled all. I haven't seen him for years now, but he travels all over the world. And his mother is very traditional Tibetan, living out in eastern Tibet, way out in the boonies, almost no contact with modernity at all. And he visits her, of course, he's a good son. And he tells her how he's visited the United States and Europe and so forth. And he told me, and she asked him once when he came back from his travels, oh, you've been to America. Where is that located relative to Mount Meru? He was really stuck, he didn't know what to say. Is it behind Mount Meru or to the south? Where is America? So what to do with those? Those were extraordinary claims, right? So what to do with those? Well, one of the claims is that you can recall your past lives. If you've achieved the 4th jhana, past lives, easy peasy, should be no problem, recall past lives. Where does that come from, though? Is this kind of a Tibetan lore, or is it a Mahayana lore? Where does it come from? Where it comes from is actually the Pali Canon, which is the most uncontested, widely, quite universally accepted corpus of the Buddhist teachings that Theravadins accept, Mahayana accept, Vajrayana accept. It's common ground. And so from the Pali Canon, here's something the Buddha himself stated when he was referring from his own first-person perspective on his own first-person experience of becoming enlightened on that night. Okay? This is interesting. So here's what the Buddha said. And this is the most authoritative statements we have of his from the Pali Canon. He said, when my concentrated mind, samadhi mind, was thus purified, bright, unblemished, and rid of imperfection, so all obscurations dispelled, when it had become malleable, wieldy, this is that suppleness referred to, remember, steady, and attained to imperturbability, deep steady. So in other words, the mind is now superbly serviceable, right? I inclined my mind to the knowledge of recollection of past lives. He's simply resting in that samadhi. Then he simply, like a laser pointer, directed his awareness, focused his attention like a laser, and directed to his past, but right through his past as a child, infant, in his mother's womb, right to the past. And he said then, this is his own words, his own first-person account, I recollected my past lives. The Buddha narrates how, with the achievement of the 4th jhana, he recollected the specific circumstances of many thousands of his own former lives over the course of many ages of world contraction and expansion. Expansion is Buddhist version of Big Bang, where a universe that we know of in the desire realm actually emerges from the form realm and then expands. expands, and eventually it then collapses in upon itself and it contracts. It starts from a singularity emerging from space, but it's emerging from an underlying deeper dimension of reality, which is the form realm, which now you've thoroughly fathomed in the fourth jhana, because you've gone through all the four stages, all the four jhanas within the form realm. You've aced it, you've seen the whole territory. You've gone from here to there, to beginning to end. And so this is standard Buddhist cosmology, that we have these world systems, and they periodically, over the course of billions of years, they emerge from space, kind of a singularity, but then the content is coming from the form realm. It's not coming out of nothing. It's emerging from, as a holographic display, an emergence from the form realm, manifesting in this coarser display, which we call in the desire realm, but which is composed of mind, of matter, energy, and all of these kind of things. And then over the course of time, it retracts and it implodes back into space, back into a singularity, dissolves. And then there's another expansion and another contraction. It's called Big Bang and Big Contraction, Big Dissolution into the singularity. That's in principle, and I emphasize the words, that's in principle how Einstein thought the universe works. That it comes out of a singularity and then it's accelerating, we know now, but then sooner or later the acceleration slows down, and then it starts to come back in and dissolves back into the singularity. Then again a quantum fluctuation, and then expands and contracts. But this is Buddha Dharma, no reference to quantum mechanics and so forth. But over many ages of world contraction and expansion, the Buddha saw through whole cycles of cosmic expansion and contraction, and many thousands of lives, from one cosmic eon to another. That's what he said. There's not a later interpretation or overlay or speculation. And then he added, this was the first true knowledge attained by me in the first watch of the night. This is his first big breakthrough. That's what he said. The first watch of the night. He's not enlightened yet, but he saw, just like with unimpeded vision, seeing life after life after life going into the past, seeing no beginning, no ultimate beginning. Ignorance was banished and true knowledge arose, darkness was banished and light arose, as happens in one who is diligent, ardent, and self-controlled. So, as a scholar of religious studies, 6 years of graduate studies, PhD, and then 4 years of teaching in the best religious studies department in the whole United States, at UC Santa Barbara, it is basically just goes without question, without a second thought, that religion is one of the world's religions. Buddhism is one of the world's great religions. And so let's kind of list them off. We have, Judaism, Christianity, Islam, no question about it. They are religions, they're not anything else, and they're all over the place. Then what else you got outside of the Eurocentric basis? You got Hinduism, you count. Hinduism all over the place. Taoism, there are Taoists all over the place. And then what else you got? Hinduism, lots of Hindus all over the place. Hinduism, Buddhism. Okay, so now we've got everything sorted out. We have 6 world religions. So we've decided Buddhism is a religion because we found a box, because we're sure it's not a science. And they're making all these claims about reincarnation and so forth. That's not a philosophy. And people are worshipping and got monks and nuns and incense and rituals and churches. This is not a philosophy. Philosophers don't have nearly as much fun. They just get an office. Boring. If you're religious, you get a temple. Incense, offerings. It's cool. So we've now, from this Eurocentric perspective, we've got Buddhism nailed. It's a religion. But let's come back. What's the prototype? What's the template that we Eurocentric individuals have for religion? Not Plato, not Socrates, not Aristotle, not Galileo, not Einstein. The first religion we have is Judaism. Now that's a religion. It's got a scripture, it's got the Torah, it's got the Talmud, that's a religion. And it's got prophets. How did we get all this knowledge, or alleged knowledge? Prophets. Where's the knowledge come from? God. How do we know? By way of prophets. How do you become a prophet? You don't. You can't apply for the job. There's no job. You get chosen, you're not chosen, but there's nothing you can do about it. If you're not a prophet, you're not a prophet, period. You don't get to become a prophet. God chooses. And there aren't any more, it seems. So, if you're a prophet, you're a dead prophet. And that's where the knowledge comes from. The source is God, but by way of prophets. And it's divinely revealed, and if you question it, well, you're wrong, because God is right, and the prophet is its clear conveyor. Islam has one prophet. They say the final prophet, the culminating, the ultimate, the final say. And that's the prophet of the one God. The Christians accept all the Jewish prophets, don't accept the Muslim prophet. But then they've got somebody beyond a prophet. The Muslims regard him as a prophet. The Jews feel uneasy about him. And the Christians regard him as the Son of God. They feel uneasy because they don't know what to do with him. Because if he's just one more prophet, then he's part of the family. But he made the exceptional claims. It makes them feel uncomfortable. So you have one person that says, I'm the Son of God. And once again, you can't apply for the job. There's only one. He was born that way. He lived that way. He died that way. God gave him. God took him back. And he had the inside view because he spoke with the authority of God. Now those are religions. Divine authority, the straight scoop. God said what he meant. And we have prophets and we have the Son of God. And that's it. Those are the sources. That is, the source is God. For all of them, source is God. One God. But the avenue to God's knowledge is by prophets and one Son of God, one Messiah. Now those are religions. Those are clearly religions. Socrates was not a prophet. He was not a son of God. Aristotle, Pythagoras, the whole list of philosophers, none of them are prophets or sons of God. And then we have Galileo. He called himself a natural philosopher. We call him a scientist. But he wasn't a prophet. He wasn't a son of God. Either one. But he used technology, refined it, and made discoveries that could be confirmed by many others, and gave rise to an ever-growing body. Now we see 400 years later, an extraordinary body of consensual knowledge that is empirically based, empirically testable, and has immensely enriched humanity's understanding of the universe and given us technology, which we all take delight in. And we suffer from on occasion, but we all like our cell phones. So now where does Buddha fit? Because Buddha never claimed to be a prophet. He's not a prophet. And he never claimed to be a son of God. Never claimed that he was unique. And so why are we calling this a religion? Because all of our three religions, which are the basis for judging anything else to be a religion, like Taoism, Hinduism, Buddhism, all of our religions have a prophet or a son of God. But Buddha wasn't either. He didn't claim to be either. He wasn't either. So why are we calling it the religion? Why are we saying he founded a religion when the founders of all the religions were either God, a son of God or prophets? He is neither. So why are we being so simplistic? Why are we assuming that our cookie cutter works equally well on religions by which we define religion when we go outside of our culture, where Krishna wasn't a prophet, he wasn't a son of God, Zhuangzi wasn't a prophet or a son of God, Shankara wasn't a prophet or son of God, Buddha wasn't, Shantideva wasn't, Padmasambhava wasn't. So why are we using our word where it just doesn't fit at all? And then people, for very good reason, a lot of people in the West, here in Italy included, just can't stand religion. For very good reasons. So many religious wars, stupidity, dogmatism, sectarianism, viciousness, inquisitions. Such a disgusting history. A lot of good, but gosh, an awful lot of bad. And then it seems to be religious doctrines, six-day creation of the universe and so forth, seems to be completely annihilated by modern scientific discoveries. So number one has a very tarnished, all the religions, we'll start with the three Western ones, have really tarnished histories. The Old Testament is just a book of warfare. There's more to it, but it's got an awful lot of warfare in it. The history is that Islam starts with warfare. It's during the time of Muhammad, it's warfare. It's been warfare ever since. Lots of warfare. A lot of other things, I'm not putting it down, but there's a lot of warfare. There's no question about that. Christians, oh yeah, I think so. Yeah, conquering the world with the sword. Cortez, oh wow, what a missionary. Convert him and kill him. and steal their gold, all in the name of Jesus and Spain. So there's just an awful lot to dislike in religion for so many reasons. And then we just reach outside of our culture, pluck out Buddhism and say it's a religion, and then we say, "Ooh, you stink. Let's take all the religious elements out of you," which we've superimposed, and come up with secular Buddhism that has no taint of religion, because we can't stand religion. I'm told again and again when I'm traveling, "Alan, don't mention religion. Alan, give a secular approach." People don't want to hear religion. People are nervous about religion. People are resistant to religion. And I want to say, Buddhism isn't a religion, so which part do you want me to leave out? Your crap? I'll be happy to leave that out, but Buddhism wasn't a religion in the first place. So who was Buddha? Here's the Buddha said, by achieving the fourth jhana, I could see thousands of past lives. What was he more like? Moses or Galileo? How did Moses come out with this knowledge? He was given it. How do saints have their knowledge or their paranormal abilities? They didn't achieve it. God's grace through them. They're pure, but the ability, the power comes from God, not from them. Buddha didn't say that he's being divinely inspired. He said, no, I actually took this pre-existing technology called samadhi and I refined it and used it in an unprecedented way and made discoveries that earlier contemplatives had made, but I corroborated them, because the Hindus had discovered reincarnation long before the Buddhists. But I corroborated them and I saw them really extensively. He sounds a lot more like Galileo than he does Moses or Jesus. Because Jesus never told you how he achieved his abilities, because he didn't. He was born the Son of God, lived the Son of God, died of the Son of God, and now sits at the right hand of God. Buddha didn't. Buddha's more like Galileo, so why are we calling him the founder of religion? Because he's talking about miracles, except he says, no, they're not miracles. This is what happens. When you develop this type of technology, this is what you get. Right? So why are we calling this religious? And where is this all coming from? This is exactly where people start speaking of Buddhist mumbo-jumbo, and they just want basic bare attention, mindfulness, stress reduction. And none of that I just read, none of that, please. Miracles, divine, mumbo-jumbo, claptrap, superstition, religious rubbish. Can't stand it. Leave that out. But where did it come from? Is this kind of Mahayana superstition, or where did it come from? And I went to one of the greatest classic in the whole history of Theravada Buddhism, in terms of commentary literature, and it is the Visuddhimagga. I'm not saying it's infallible, but it is truly a classic, and it is about as authoritative outside the Buddhist teachings in the Pali Canon. This is about as definitive as it gets for the whole Theravada tradition. This is like the Lamrim Chemo for the Gelupas. That's about as definitive as it gets. Anybody who knows you know how definitive that is. This is the Lamrim Chemo for the Theravada tradition. Visuddhimagga, Path of Purification. He's got a whole chapter to what the translator calls supernormal powers. That's good, supernormal, because they're not normal. Paranormal, supernormal, but they're not miracles, they're not grace, they're not divine, they're not religious, they're just abilities that come out of developing extraordinary technology, which is samadhi technology, and not technology of external instruments like cell phones. Here's what he says. In order to show the benefits of developing concentration, or samadhi, to clansmen whose concentration has reached the fourth jhana, so I'm going with the Pali now, jhana Pali, dhyana Sanskrit, tomatoes. So in order to show the benefits, why would you go to the lengths of developing the fourth jhana? To clansmen, your fellow kin, your peers, whose concentration has reached the fourth jhana, and in order to teach progressively refined Dhamma, the 5 kinds of mundane direct knowledge or extrasensory perception, have been described by the Blessed One, by the Buddha himself, in the Pali Canon. And they are: the kinds of supernormal power are described in the way beginning, when his concentrated mind is thus purified, bright, unblemished, rid of defilement, and has become malleable, wieldy, steady, and attained to imperturbability. Sounds a lot like a telescope to me. I mean, take all that and just apply it to a telescope. That's a very good telescope. Okay? Pre-existing technology, but now used in exceptional ways. He inclines his mind to the kinds of supernormal power. he turns his attention to unveiling these powers of heightened consciousness, empowered consciousness, paranormal consciousness. He wields the various kinds of supernormal power. Having been one, he becomes many. This is from the Digha Nikaya. This is the Buddhist teachings, not just the commentary. The knowledge of the divine ear element, clairaudience. Knowledge of the penetration of minds, being able to directly see other people's minds. The knowledge of recollection of past lives. The Buddha claimed it. Many, many contemplatives after him have claimed this, including the late Dubon Rinpoche. In the film Yogis of Tibet, looks into the camera and says, I can remember all my past lives. This is not ancient history. How did he do it? About 60 years of meditation. So it's still happening. So this is not like anything in religion. We have no fresh prophets. We have no incarnations of Jesus. Jesus Tulku number 3 and 4 and so forth. There's no recipe for becoming a prophet or a son of God. But there is a recipe for becoming a Galileo, an Einstein, a Newton, and so forth, and that is study your brains out and hope you're really gifted. And you'll at least be able to corroborate the great discoveries of the past, and if you're really brilliant, you might be able to add something new. This is much closer to science than it is religion, and it's certainly not philosophy. The knowledge of the passing away and reappearance of beings from lifetime to lifetime. So it continues, just as when a goldsmith, this is Buddha Gosa writing, now giving some commentary. Just as when a goldsmith wants to make some kind of ornament, he does so only after making the gold malleable and wieldy by smelting it, etc. And just as when a potter wants to make some kind of vessel, he does so only after making the clay well kneaded and malleable. A beginner, too, must likewise prepare for the kinds of supernormal powers by controlling his mind in these 14 ways. And he describes exactly what those are. This is engineering. This is technology. It's not how to become a prophet or a son of God. He's telling you exactly how do you refine and develop your mind so that these powers come out. It's developing a mental cell phone. And he must do so by making his mind malleable and wieldy, both by attaining under the headings of zeal, consciousness, energy, and inquiry, and by mastery in adverting and so on. He's talking about high-level technology in terms of developing and utilizing the jhanas. It goes into a lot of detail. He's already covered it. If you want to see it, this is chapter 12, look in chapter 11. In the preceding chapters, you'll know exactly what he's talking about. When I was studying this, when I was under Balangoda Ananda Maitreya's guidance in Sri Lanka, I was thinking, I had a background in science already and biology, and I thought, but this is not religion, and this certainly isn't philosophy. This is either complete superstition, or else this is an incredible science, the likes of which we do not have in the West. It's one of the two. It's either completely bogus, like this is all just, excuse me the word, just complete bullshit, that has duped these people century after century after century while they're claiming to have actually used it, many of them, and gained this insight. But they're all liars, of course. Or else this is just like, wow, we are being visited by extraterrestrials. And they're known as Indians and Sri Lankans and Tibetans, because they may as well be from another planet, because this is not from the world we know of. But one who already has the required condition for it, owing to practice in previous lives. Some people are gifted. Mozart was gifted. There are other prodigies in mathematics, in music, and art, and so forth. They're just incredibly gifted. And with a little bit of training, they wind up world class. Okay, we know that's true. And it's also true in Dharma. It's true for contemplative. There are people who are gifted, and they're doing, just amazing things when they're 10 years old. Mingyur Dorje, this is a commentary on his text. This was a disciple of Karma Chagmé Rinpoche. He was a prodigy, unbelievable. So there are those who just come with tremendous momentum, owing to practice in previous lives. They need only prepare himself by acquiring mastery in the fourth jhana, in the kasinas. So you don't necessarily go through this extremely elaborate, almost like Olympic training in the four jhanas and the four samapatis. I mean, you look at it and it's kind of like, wow. That's arduous. That's a heck of a lot of work. But some people, not so difficult, because they have a lot of momentum. He continues, for a malleable consciousness is wieldy, like well-smelted gold. And it is both of these, because it is well developed according as it is said, bhikkhus, I do not see anyone I do not see any one thing that, when developed and cultivated, becomes so malleable and wieldy as does the mind. If you want to develop high technology, don't look to matter or energy. Look to the mind. This is the greatest growth, the greatest upward mobility, to use another kind of metaphor. If you're looking for flexibility and drawing forth the power, don't look to matter or energy. It's derivative. Look to the prime, look to consciousness. Normally one, he adverts to himself as many or 100 or 1,000 or 100,000. This is where you're manifesting yourself in multiple places. Having adverted, he resolves with knowledge, let me be many, and he cites the source in this, in the Pali Canon. This is called success by resolve because it is produced by resolving. It's just that intention, let me be many, and then out go the holographic images by the power of samadhi. Holography is a fantastic technology. It's great. It rests on quantum mechanics. That's what we're really good at. But this is internal. I read this article, just looked at it again, by Paul Davies in Time magazine on the search for extraterrestrial life. And he concluded the article. It's thoughtful, it's nice. But he ended on such a note that is so scientific. He cites the person who started SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence in the 1960s. He cites him, the founder of this. Let's apply science and see if there's anybody out there who might be trying to communicate with us. And he ended on this note, citing him. He said, and why are we doing this? You ready? So that we can know who we are and what is our place in the universe. Looking as far outwards as possible. So we know more about this is just a factual statement, not contestable. We know more about distant galaxies, about black holes, about dark matter, about the expanding universe, about the Big Bang, the early inflation period. We know more about the universe out there than we know about the origins of our own consciousness. Which is to say, we don't know anything about the origins of our consciousness. And yet we have very sophisticated theories about the origins of the universe. And we don't even have a theory, not even a scientific theory, not one, about the origins of our own consciousness. And we want to know ourselves. We don't look inwards, we look out to the stars. Is anybody out there who can tell us who we are? Anybody? Anybody? It's kind of like, wow, how myopic. It's kind of like, I want to know about astronomy. Let me close my eyes and see. That given as follows: having abandoned his normal form, he shows himself in the form of a boy or the form of a serpent. He's manifesting these different appearances. Or he shows a manifold military array, and he cites the source. This is called success as transformation because of the abandoning and alteration of the normal form. That given in this way, here, a bhikkhu, and this is the Buddha's words, here a bhikkhu creates out of his body another body possessing visible form, mind-made. Is called success as the mind-made body because it occurs as the production of another mind-made body inside the body. Okay? This is not miracle, this is what you can do with that level of technology, of samadhi. What is success through the sciences? Masters of the sciences. This is contemplative science, and this is the translation. I'm just reading the translation. Masters of the science, having pronounced their scientific spells, probably some kind of mantra, or there's things like mantra in the Pali Canon, travel through the air, and they show an elephant in space, in the sky, and they show a manifold military array. In other words, the ability to project outwardly things that other people can say. A couple of years ago, I was in Bhutan. I translated for just about 10 days with Ganden Tukur Rinpoche, Premier Lama of Bhutan. Wonderful teacher. Spent 9 years in retreat. Really outstanding. An excellent teacher as well. I had the privilege to translate for him for this short time. And he'd just been to a contemplative community down in the south of Bhutan with a great Gelug Kagyü master. Great. He's one of his disciples. Ganden Tukur Rinpoche is. And he said he met there was one yogi there that he met. And he's displayed to all his fellow contemplatives in that community two things, and I think I can remember. I think it was a leopard and a deer. He could just project from his mind a leopard, and other people would see it, or a deer. And he had very, very good samadhi. And Ganden, and everybody in the community knew it. He would do it. He would show it. And then Ganjatuga Rinpoche, he's very blunt, very straight Lama. He told me that I sought him out and I asked him, why are you doing that? Why a leopard and a deer? Why not project a Buddha? That would be nicer. And I said, well, I like leopards and deer. There wasn't much of an answer. But this is still going on. It's still going on. This was 2 years ago, and this guy didn't seem like he was terribly old. He's doing this with his mind, you know. This is not ancient history. But you really have to develop very good samadhi, and very few people are doing that anymore. They think it's unnecessary. Continuing on. Oh, we're late. I'm going to do one more. Having been one, he becomes many. Having become many, he becomes one. He appears and vanishes. He goes unhindered through walls, through enclosures, through mountains, as though in open space. He dives in and out of the earth as through water. He goes on unbroken water as on earth. Seated cross-legged, he travels in space like a winged bird. With his hand he touches and strokes the moon and sun, so mighty and powerful. He wields bodily mastery even as far as the Brahma world. And that's from the Digha Nikaya. That's from the Pali Canon. It's the Buddhist teachings. So it'd be so nice to say, oh, the Buddha never said that. That's bullshit. But the Buddha was good. Well, the Buddha is good, but you have to confront this. He said that. So what on earth do you do with that? Herein, the 4 planes should be understood as the 4 jhanas. There are these 4 dimensions within the realm of the form realm. For this has been said by the general of the Dhamma, the elder Sariputra, the general of the Dhamma. What are the 4 planes of supernormal power? They are the first jhana as the plane born of seclusion, the second jhana as the plane of happiness and bliss, the third jhana as the plane of equanimity and bliss, the fourth jhana as the plane of neither pain nor pleasure. These 4 planes of supernormal power, these 4 jhanas within the form realm, lead to the attaining of supernormal power, to the obtaining of supernormal power, to the transformation due to supernormal power, to the majesty of supernormal power, to fearlessness in supernormal power. He gives the source. And he reaches supernormal power, becoming light, malleable, and wieldy in the body, after steeping himself in blissful perception and light perception, due to the pervasion of happiness and pervasion of bliss, which is why the first 3 jhanas should be understood as the accessory plane, since they lead to the obtaining of the supernormal power in this manner. But the 4th is the natural plane for obtaining supernormal power. The jhana is the big platform. That's when you really have this big bandwidth of ranges of paranormal ability and extrasential perception. So there it is. So I wrote all of this not with the intention now. Wasn't that persuasive? You all believe, right? Because what's that going to do you? You believe it, you don't believe it, but how does that change your life? As a religious belief, I think it's like inert. But if this is true, this means that we have, through all of 400 years of science, we've only scratched the surface of the whole of reality for a very simple reason. We've left out the mind. The whole scientific understanding of reality, all of it, has left out the mind. There's no explanation of the origins of the mind, no explanation of the nature of the mind, no explanation of how mind influences matter, no explanation of the role of mind in nature, no explanation of what happens at death, no explanation, nada, zero, zip, and no instrument, no technology, no methodology for exploring the mind directly. We're in the Dark Ages. We're in a pre-contemplative era. We haven't even started. And the best we're doing right now is scientists studying the brains and behavior of meditators. So I want to end on this note. We're going just a little bit over, but only like 5 more minutes. I think there's just only 2 ways of reading this. It's either superstition, claptrap, mumbo jumbo, for heaven's sake, run, because this is just superstition at the worst, and maybe a grand conspiracy by these nefarious Buddhists trying to fool everybody else into thinking they actually have something more than prayer wheels. Or else this is profoundly challenging our whole vision of reality and the nature of the mind in reality. It's one of those 2. You really can't have it both ways. And this is from the Buddha. It would be so nice to let him off the hook. He was rational, empirical. He was pretty much like, a 21st century person, because he didn't believe in religion, and he just humored the people who believe in reincarnation. That's kind of nice. It's complete bullshit, but it does make us feel good. But that's just not viable. That's a pipe dream. It's absurd speculation. So let's just consider maybe, in some perspective, that can make sense. And I'm referring here now to something very brief. Arthur C. Clarke, one of the finest science fiction writers of the modern era, really quite brilliant. Well-versed in science. He wrote science fiction, of course, but he really had a good knowledge of science. He also lived in Sri Lanka, by the way. Gave him a bit more of a broader scope, I think. He has, Arthur C. Clarke's 3 laws. I like these. You ready? 3 laws. You can find this on Wikipedia. Clarke's first law. You ready? This is really juicy. When a distinguished but elderly scientist states that something is possible, he's almost certainly right. When he states that something is impossible, he's very probably wrong. Law number 1. Clarke's second law. The only way of discovering the limits of the possible is to venture a little way past them into the impossible. This is impossible. My cell phone is completely impossible. It's ridiculously impossible. From even the first half of the 20th century, let alone the 19th, this is just a walking impossibility. But somebody thought about the impossible. It turned out to be possible. Final law is one I was really focusing in on. Clarke's third law. Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So if you show this to a Tibetan living way out in the Tibetan outback, who, everybody has a cell phone now, even in Tibet, but let's say, okay, time warp, go back, and show this to a Tibetan living 50 years ago, and they didn't exist, but it's a thought experiment. This is magic. This is like, wow, paranormal abilities, cities, clairvoyance, wow, in the palm of my hand. Mingyur Dorje has Buddhahood in the palm of the hand. This is pretty close. And it's not only, but all of the knowledge I have access to. I wanted to know Clarke's third law. I just went click, 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 and there it was. This is kind of close to omniscience. In the palm of my hand. This is magic. I mean, it's just like, whoa. This is magic if you don't understand it. The 4 jhanas and the powers coming out of them are magic if you don't understand them. If you do understand, there's nothing magical about it at all. Nothing. Nothing mysterious, nothing magical, nothing. Difficult. Developing a cell phone is difficult. That took an awful lot of work, a lot of brilliance, a lot of genius, a lot of stages of development. Remember the first computers? Yeah. So, if you don't understand it, it's magic. If it's sufficiently high, it's magic. But if you understand it, not magic at all. And that's what is a working hypothesis for those following this path. It's not magic. Buddha is no prophet. Buddha is no son of God. He told exactly how he acquired these abilities. And then it's been replicated time and time and time and time again. In India, China, Mongolia, Sri Lanka, Tibet, and so forth. Replicated many, many, many hundreds and thousands of times over history, 2,500 years, to the present day. That's not religion. That's science. Or is it? And that's where it gets fun. To have an open mind. But is this a hypothesis interesting enough to explore? Interesting enough to make the sacrifices? Because this is not going to come easy. Nobody says it's easy. And not many people are doing it. We know that very well. Ask your Dharma teachers. Ask your Dharma teachers. How many people do you know who are developing shamatha? Just shamatha, let alone 4 jhana. If you're not doing it, you don't get the result. That's simple. Is it rare for people nowadays to be practicing, achieving shamatha, achieving the 4th jhana? Yeah, you bet it's rare. Gosh, why? Oh, gee, why? Oh, because hardly anybody's doing it. And you need a laboratory. You need a conducive environment. And you don't find them, you have to make them. It's really that simple for shamatha. You have to make them. Look for them. Ask Amy. Ask any of our old-timers. You don't find them, right? Brendan, you don't find them, do you? Don't find them. Amy didn't find them. I was in a series of retreats for 4 years. I never found one. A really conducive environment? And I didn't have the money to buy one. I was a monk. You have to create them. Create them, though. You might make history for the benefit of all humanity. To blow our minds. discover our minds and blow our minds. Enjoy your weekend. See you on Sunday.